oh, geez. I was like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry before I even start talking. All right. Like she said, my name is Ceri. And pretty much at the end of this, I just want you to know that no matter how dark of a time that you're going through, how hopeless, and when you just feel that there's nobody around you, God is always there. Like, he never, ever, ever leaves you. He's like giving you the biggest hug, even in the complete darkness. All right. So, my name is Ceri. I am married to a wonderful man, Jordan. He's my high school sweetheart. And I have 2 boys, Owen and Ramey, 11 and 6. And they're actually playing soccer and football today, so I'm missing out on their first games. But life was pretty, like, I've always known Jesus. I've always loved Jesus. I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that, taught me about God, Jesus, everlasting life. So very thankful for that. But like I wrote in my little blurb, he wasn't always number one in my life. He wasn't, the forefront that if something happened, I was like, oh, Jesus, fix this for me, like make this go away. It was like, okay, I can do this myself. I'll figure it out. It's fine. So my husband and I, we got married when we were 22, had a baby at 23. My pregnancy was pretty normal. Everything went pretty good. I had the baby blues for a couple weeks. My mom would get phone calls at 2 in the morning. But other than that, he was a super easy baby. It was really, like I said, a good pregnancy. But my husband, in the meantime, was a traveling lineman. He was in an apprenticeship program, so he traveled a lot at the time. And so we were very lucky to be in Malta, where we have a ton of family. And so, a lot of the time when it's a long distance and trying to do long distance and marriages and stuff, it can be very difficult. But, I'm not saying there wasn't hard times, but it actually went by really fast. Like, he'd leave Monday morning, be back Thursday afternoon. And then the last year, he was in Denver, and that was when he was there for a full year, and our baby was 9 months old, Owen, at the time when he went there. But that was a God thing, too. Tickets were only $100 round trip to fly from Billings to Denver, so we were able to do a lot of back and forth traveling. But when he was done with the apprenticeship program, and then he's a journeyman lineman, we were just trying to really find somewhere that we'd be able to not have to travel anymore and be able to have him home every night. And we were really hoping that was going to be Malta, but it didn't end up being Malta. And so fast forward a little bit, a position came up in Billings. And we've always liked Billings. You know how it is when you grow up in Glasgow, Malta, like the nearest Walmart is Billings. So you're like, well, at least like we went to Billings a lot, so we know the road real well. So we get moved, and in the meantime, I'm going to kind of go back and forth a little bit. We've been trying for a baby. Owen was 4 at the time, so we'd been trying for a couple years, and we'd had a miscarriage, and then we kind of had gotten to that point where it was like, you know what, maybe he's meant to be an only child, that's okay, like, he's a handful, so 1 might be enough for us. So Jordan went down early and started working, and he was looking for apartments, and we found this cute little house that was like the size of an apartment. It was a little 2-bedroom house, and we're like, oh, this will be perfect. It's 20 minutes from his work. He can drive back and forth. And we get moved there, and then we find out that we're pregnant. And I was like, yay! And then I was like, oh my gosh. This house is tiny. Babies have a ton of stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll figure this out. It's fine. He can be a hallway baby. It'll be fine. So my pregnancy was going like super well. Everything was going well with my appointments. And then I started to my mind just kind of started to play tricks with me. My first thought that I had was, we don't live in a third world country, thankfully, but when you're pregnant, you get a lot of blood drawn, everything. And so they drew my blood, and then I left, and then I was driving home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did they change the needle when they did my blood? What if it was a dirty needle? What if I have HIV? And then I convinced myself I had HIV. I was like, I'm gonna die. my baby's gonna die, everyone's dying. Like, I have it for sure. And like, we don't, like I said, live in a third world country. But I can look back at these things now and be like, oh my gosh, Ceri, like, wow. And then about 2 weeks, well, it was actually like 3 weeks before I had him, my doctor, who I'd been going to, was amazing. I was telling her about this HIV thing, and she's like, it's okay, like, I understand kind of what you're going to. I was exposed to hepatitis C in one of her surgeries, an emergency surgery, and I'm like, what? So, you're gonna see where that kind of goes. And I was like, so what do you do to like prevent that happening from me? And I had C-section, so she was gonna be all up in there. I was like, what are you gonna do? And she's like, oh, I just double glove. I'm like, with your scalpel glove? It's gonna, okay. And I like thought about it, and I was just like, and did you notice how I'm not like praying about this and going, Jesus, like, you're gonna fix this for me, you're gonna make everything okay? Like, I'm not. Like, okay, what am I gonna do? And so I was just like, I can't have you be my doctor. Like, I'm literally 3 weeks from having a baby. I'm like, I can't. I know what I will do. I know in my mind, I already know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna convince myself that I have hepatitis C next. And so I had to break up with my doctor. And then I got a doctor who was very cranky and old, who was a very old man that probably shouldn't have been doing babies anymore, but he was. So I'm already hormonal, I'm already like all up in my head, things are going on, and I had another thought, and it just spirals and spirals. So like the last 2 weeks of my pregnancy, I was crying all the time, just bawling. And my husband was like, what is going on? Like, what is going on with you? Like, do we need to go to the doctor? I'm like, I think so. So we go to the doctor, and he's like, is she normally like this? Like, what is her deal? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he gave me a prescription for Ativan. Well, I didn't know much about Ativan, but it was like amazing. And so I was like, I'd just, pop a pill at 5 in the morning, like when I'd wake up, like all like, oh, and I'd be like, all right, we're good. Well, then I found out that apparently it's an addictive drug. And so then I like cut it cold turkey because I was like, oh my gosh, my baby, like everything, like, oh no, this is awful. Like I don't have an addictive personality, but in my mind I was like, oh gosh, like I need one more thing. So I had my baby, everything went good. It was a planned C-section. It was, he was perfect. He was healthy, everything. Like, thank you, Jesus, for that, because wow, it would have been a lot more if there was things wrong with him as well. So then he was probably about a month old, and I'd heard about this baby that had been shaken. And I was like, oh no, that's terrible that someone could do that, to feel like that, where they just want him to be quiet for a second. Like, I was like, oh, that's awful. And then how my things go is I would get triggered. And so then a couple days later, like my husband and my other son had went walking, and I was like, okay, like just normal stuff. My baby, like he'd like to be bounced on a ball, so I'd bounce him on a ball, and then he like fell asleep, and so I laid him in his basket, and he's like sleeping, good to go. And then I'm doing in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I had the thought, like, did I just shake my baby? Did I shake my baby? Oh my God, I shook my baby. Like something happened to baby. I know it. I shook him, I hurt him, and I didn't. He was fine. Like you could physically see it. But when your mind decides to pretty much deceive you, it's a very strong muscle in your brain. It is something, when it goes against you, it is very, very, very hard to talk yourself out of it, especially when you're like convincing yourself over and over and over again. And I like called my aunt. I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is what happened. Like, and she's a medic, and she's like, well, what's he doing? I was like, well, he's sleeping, he's breathing, he's fine. And she's like, you probably didn't shake him then. And I'm like, I know, but I'm convinced I did. And she's like, but you didn't. And I'm like, I know. And obviously I didn't, but just to feel the pain of that I could have hurt my baby, or thinking that I did hurt him, was awful. And that was only the start of it. That was only the start of what I was going to go through for 3 years. my next one, I was eventually diagnosed with postpartum anxiety and OCD, intrusive thoughts. And the best way I explain an intrusive thought is we all have them, but we all can just be like, ooh, didn't like that one, move along. So like, let's say you're cutting potatoes and you're like, oh gosh, I almost cut my finger, like that would have been bad, like blood everywhere, and ooh, move along. So I had that one too. I hid all the knives in my house and like refused to cut things because I was just convinced like someone was gonna hurt themselves, I was gonna hurt myself, like knives are dangerous, like we can't be using knives in our house. My husband was real excited about that one. But the next time it hit me was in July, 4th of July. I was at the lake with a friend and I'd went, what do you call it, the little rafty thing? Kayaking, yeah, that's it. So we were kayaking and everything was going good. I was having a good time and I'm driving home and it was at Nelson from Malta. So it's like a 20-minute drive. And 4th of July, that road, there's like 500 people on it at like one time. Like there's so many people, there's bikers, everything. And I was driving and I see these 3 bikers and so I slow down and I get over. And then I'm driving and I look back and I see 3 bikers still. But a little bit later, I convinced myself I hit a biker. And the worst part about it is that I hit a biker and left him in the ditch. I convinced myself that I had hurt this person and I just left them to die by themselves. And I can think of this thought now and be like, okay, the 500 people driving back and forth, like the cops would be like arresting me. I think the other 2 people that were with him would have noticed him not being there, I think. But my dad had to drive me the next morning up and down the ditches to make sure that I hadn't hit anybody. Like, even though I knew it wasn't true, I knew I hadn't done anything, like, it was such a small voice in my head that was like, you didn't do anything, you're not that person, you would never leave somebody to be hurt, like, that's just not what you would do. And so, and then I started just like, I was wondering, like, then God came and I was just like, God, where are you? Like, why are you letting this happen to me? Like, I am not this person. I've never been someone that would want to hurt somebody or have somebody in pain or uncomfortable around me or anything. And I was just like, you're not here. Like, my life had been pretty easy. I hadn't had anything that was just like so dramatic of a change for me. So I was just like, God, this is not how you've let my life be. Like, my life was pretty simple. I kind of want to go back to that one where I just was easy breezy, living life, having fun, going about. And I was just like, why are you letting this happen to me? And so it just became something where I was like, God, you're not there. You're not helping me. And I can look back now and see the times, like all the times that he was there and helping me, like just my family, my friends, and the people, the doctors, my therapists, like people that he put in my life. But at that time, I just felt so alone. And I was like, you're not here, God. You've left me. You don't care about me. And I was having to do where someone would have to be with me at all times because I was terrified to be alone with my children because I didn't want to have a thought that I'd hurt them or something bad had happened to them. So my family, someone would like rotate and pretty much babysit me like the whole time. So then it became like everyone kind of had to get started going back to their life. So my kids had to go to daycare and my husband would go to work. And so I would be home by myself. And I tried to work for a little while. I'd leave the house on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it was the scariest time in my life to like get in the car and drive because I was like, oh my goodness, if I have a thought in between this house and there's not going to be anybody to prove to me that nothing happened, you didn't think anything, you didn't do anything, like you literally drove from point A to B, good to go. And so I got home one time from work, and there was this kid outside, like across the street playing with his kids and with his parents, and I convinced myself that I did something terrible to this kid. I don't even know the kid. I didn't even go across the street to the kid, but to make myself, I made myself feel like did do something to him. I don't know what I did to him, but I did something. And I would never want to hurt anybody, a kid, anything. So you're seeing like a process of this where it's like hitting me at the part of me that is, I would never do that. So it was like, okay, I'm going to hit you. The devil's like, I'm going to get you here. This is where it really like gets you going and makes you feel like you're the worst person in the world and you don't deserve anything. And so I stopped going to work. I stopped driving. I started actually being in my, I would get the kids, I'd help my husband get the kids ready to go in the morning. They would leave and I would run up the stairs to my room and not leave the whole day. Thankfully it had a bathroom. But I would not leave the whole day. I'd close all the blinds. I'd be in the dark. And I look back at like my journals and I see like 7:30, got the kids out the door, 7:33, ran up the stairs, got stuff cleaned up downstairs, ran up the stairs, got in my room, talked to such and such for this amount of time, talked to such and such for this amount of time. I would call, and God also shows you who your true friends are. He lets you know, like, these are the people that are going to stand with you no matter what, because they never didn't answer their phone. And it would be so hard to answer a phone call from someone that you know that you're going to get a call and they're crying the whole time. Not their happy friend that was like, hey, how are you? How's it going? What's new in your life? Because that was who I was before. And this one was, oh, just cry. And thankfully I had friends that could carry on conversations by themselves. Because sometimes I'd just sit there in silence and just be crying, and I could not, I just couldn't. And my cousin Amber had suffered with anxiety, and so she had given me a verse that my grandma had given her, and it was Proverbs 3:24. As I lay down to sleep, I will not be afraid. As I lay down to sleep, my sleep will be sweet. And I would say that that verse over and over and over to myself, just trying to calm myself to just lay and rest, because my body was in such fight or flight, and it was like, flee. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. This is so painful. Just anxiety filled all the time. And so she had given me that, and my uncle had given me a verse, Ephesians 6:11, put on the full army of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. And so I would tell myself that, you need to get strong, you need to get your faith strong, you need to know that Jesus is going to protect you, he's going to do this, God has you, he's going to build, I would just picture this box around me, the devil cannot penetrate, he's not going to come in here. And I would just pray, and I'd read my Bible over and over and over, God, and I'd be like, God, where? I still don't, I'm still suffering, I'm still having these thoughts, I'm still thinking I'm the worst person in the world, and nobody deserves to have to deal with this person. You shouldn't have to have a life where, my husband, God, that's another thing, God was looking out for me with him, because I told him so many times, I'm like, you need to leave me. You need to take the kids and just go away from me, because it's not fair that they have to live with me like this. This is not who they signed up. This is not who you signed up for. This is not the mom I want to be for my children. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere. And when you can't fight, I'm going to fight for you, because we need you more than you need us. He's like, you're such a strong person, and you're going to continue to fight this, because we can't imagine a world where you're not in it. And it wasn't that I wanted to take my life, but I really wanted God to do me a solid and be like, nope, heaven. And I was just like, oh man, God, it would just be really easy if you could call me home now, because I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't know if any of you guys have read or watched Anne of Green Gables. I love Anne of Green Gables. But anyways, Anne in one line says, I'm in the depths of despair. And Marilla says, the depths of despair is where God is not there. And I was like, I think I'm there. I think he's gone. I'm pretty sure I'm Anne right now. Marilla's not, but then Marilla was my mom. you're fine, you're going to be okay, you're going to get through this. Like, and she'd just pray with me, and I mean, she'd be on the phone with me for like hours at a time, like just praying and going about her business and doing stuff, and then I'd just be there, and she'd be like, "Are you still there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm still here." But they were really hard thoughts that would come into my mind all the time. And I got to the point where I would not leave my house by myself. I would not drive. I could not go and do something simple like fill up my car at a gas station. That was the most horrifying thing in the world, to think of leaving by myself to go do something. I wouldn't even want to leave and go with somebody to a grocery store. My cousin Brooke, she had to buy about the whole grocery store one time because like she'd touch stuff and put it back, and I was like, did I do something to that? Did I poison that? And she's like, no, I touched it. And I was like, I think I did though. I better buy it. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'll buy the meat. And so I started convincing myself that I was poisoning people. I don't know who I was poisoning. I don't know what I was poisoning them with. My therapist, we were sitting there one time, and she was a godsend. She's sitting there, and she has her Coke that she hadn't even opened yet, and I'm sitting on the couch, and she's sitting over there, and I'm like, she's like, what are you thinking? I'm like, that I poisoned you. And she's like, huh? I'm like, yep, your pop. I put something in it. She's like, you mean the pop that's still sealed? That one? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay. All right. And like, God bless her soul. She calls the next morning. She's like, I'm still alive. You didn't put enough in there. Like, so it's like I'd have people in my life that would, be humorous to me and just be like, Ceri, come on. And another verse was 2 Timothy 1:7. For God did not give us a spirit of fear. And I would tell myself this over and over again. I'm like, you don't have a spirit of fear. You don't have a spirit of fear. And I'm like, yes, I do, God. I do. It's so fearful, top to bottom. So much fear. He did give you power, love, and of sound mind. And I was like, I think you're wrong about that one too. Because my mind is like, no. I remember the first year when Amber was talking about prophetic and how to have somebody pray over you, and even just having somebody that loves Jesus so much pray over you is so powerful. To have someone that loves you, they may not even know you, but they love you because Jesus loves you. And they just pray over you, and they have no idea what's going on in your life. But somehow, God, that's how, can give them words, can give them stories, or even something that's happened in your life, and you're like, huh. So the first year I came to this, I was like, I'm not going up there. It's not happening. And so I didn't go up there, and my cousin, and Brooke was praying, and she's like, come up. And so she had to, go up there already, and I was like, I'm not doing it. And so the first year of that went by, but then the next year, and it was probably in January when I fell to my knees in my room, and I was like, God, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here. I am such a burden to everybody around me. God, you just got to take me out of here because I just can't anymore. I'm done. And I feel like you've abandoned me. You're not here anymore. I don't feel you here. I just can't. And so then that year I came to the women conference, and Brooke literally drug me to the front. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. And so Chris actually prayed over me. And she starts praying, and she's like, God wants you to know that when you were in your room on your knees, broken, and you said he wasn't there, he was holding you. He was holding you the whole time and comforting you. That right there was so powerful, and I think that was the moment that I was like, okay, God is here. God has me. No matter what, he's there. He's going to never leave me. And that was complete proof that it's I know you keep saying I'm not there, but hello, I'm right here the whole time. And so that kind of started where I was just like, okay, like, God has me. I can do this. So I started taking little baby steps, trying to make myself come out of my room. We ended up building a house, and so we moved from that dark room, and my husband refused to put blinds on the house, so I couldn't close them. And he's like, you need some sunshine. Yeah, ghostly white. Why do I need sunshine? But I started to feel lighter. Like, okay, I might get better. I mean, it wasn't like, all right, I'm going to drive, I'm going to do this, it was definitely not that. There was, my first thing that I started to do was the gas station, which was literally 1.79 miles from my house. And I called my therapist and I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Cause she's like, cognitive behavioral therapy, this is what you need to do. You need to do your worst fears. And I was like, driving to the gas station, that's terrifying. And so I started with that, where I would just have somebody on the phone with me and I'd be like, all right, Jesus, like I would do my whole prayer and be like, all right, God, I'm putting on the armor. Like, and I'm thinking like helmet, shoulder pads, like you need it all to drive 1.79 miles to the gas station. And so I just pray, and God was like, you got this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna get there, it's gonna be fine. And so I'd have somebody on the phone, I'm like, but don't talk, because I need to pay attention, like 10 and 2. This is very important stuff that's happening right here. So whoever it would be at the time, my mom, my grandma, my sister, like whoever it is, they're like, okay, I'm not gonna talk, you're fine, I'm like, you're talking. And so then I'd get in the car and I'd drive, and I'd be like, I'm doing it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I could not make 1.79 miles. It took me probably a solid week to get 1.79 miles, because I'd be like, no, or just like, I wouldn't even leave I'd get in my car and not leave the garage. It's like, okay. But even those little steps were God, like, all right, you got this, baby steps. It was pretty much rebirth of starting out, and where you're a baby, you're learning to crawl, you're learning to walk, you're learning to talk. That was me. Little by little by little. And God, again, put an angel in my life. I was new to town. I live in Shepherd. And this mom was her son was in my son's class, and we got to talking, and like we're super good friends now. We hang out all the time, and I'm like, why did you talk to me? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know why we're friends. Like, why? How did it happen? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. And it was so random, because my whole family had been saying, hey, you need to get outside, you need to go for walks, you need to exercise. Like, exercise is so good for your brain. And she's like, I love working out. You should come work out with me. And I was like, ooh, that means I have to drive there and not tell her that, hey, I don't drive, actually. But that was, instead of doing the 1.79 miles to the gas station, I would do 2 miles to her house. Every day, I would go and I would work out with her, and she was such, like, she loves Jesus so much, so she was just such an encouragement to me that, and I mean, obviously, there's your sign. Like, God is with you no matter what, even in your darkest time, when you think that you can't go on, you're done, you want to, like, get me out of here. God does, he puts those people in our life. And then John 14:2-7, peace. Peace I leave you, my peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I started to actually believe that, because I was like, okay, God has given me so much peace, and all those thoughts that I've had, I've only given you just little thoughts of what I had. I had them for 3 years. It didn't matter. For instance, one of them was something that you wouldn't think twice about doing. An elderly woman was struggling getting her groceries in, and I was like, oh, I can help you. Got her all helped and got her on her way, and then I got in my car, and this was obviously when I was still driving, and I was like, I did something to hurt that lady, I'm sure of it. I probably put something in her groceries, and it would be people that you wouldn't be able to double check and be like, oh, are you okay? You're good, right? You're good? No? So God just, he just really made me realize that, like, I am your peace. I am the one that no matter where you are in life, no matter if you think you are alone, you are never, ever, 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 ever alone. And if you can take anything from today, is you are never alone. Like, when you think that you cannot go on and that everybody has left you, like, thankfully I have family and friends, but there is always somebody that God will put into your life that will get you through it, that will help you along your way. Forgot my train of thought for a second. It's like, where was I? Another thing I started doing is, like, all these verses that I've said. I don't know if you've watched or listened to podcasts and stuff to, like, tell yourself, like, you're beautiful, you're awesome, you're going to do great today, and you're supposed to put sticky notes everywhere. Oh my gosh. I had sticky notes all over my house, like, of verses that were, like, these ones that were, okay, this is meaningful here, this is meaningful here. Like, kids would come over to the house to play, and they'd be like, what are you? I want to be like, it's my mom. They're Bible verses. But it would just little reminders to remind you that God's here, he's got you, he's strengthening you. If you think you can't do it, you can, and then some. And my grandma, actually, I had it on my fridge forever, and I still have it behind this plaque that says, God's got you, everything. And the prayer was, Dear Lord, as I make the decisions, please be before me to show me the right way, beside me for the friendship, behind me for encouragement, above me for protection, and within me to give me your peace. Amen. I would say that every single day as I just continued to get better and better and better, because I knew that God was a worship team. I want to start getting, go potty, Kirsten. But I just knew that God was going to heal me, and my mom would always say, she's like, God told me he's going to use you. And even, like, you know, you see some people up saying their things, and they're talking to thousands, and you can just feel God all around, and you're just like, oh my gosh, he is being so used. And all I thought to myself was like, okay, God, like, you better at least let this help one person. I mean, just give me one person that I've helped with this, because to go through it for 3 years and not know that it would be okay was so hard to get up and continue to do it over and over and over again, and put on a fake smile with my children and be like trying to be happy in that moment, because I wanted them to have good memories with their mom, and I wanted them to know that no matter what, like, she was a good mom. Like, I even thought to the point, like, that's another thing where I just think my baby saved me, because I was like, okay, Owen has so many people that love him, that know him, he knows everyone, like, everybody needs their mom, but I was like, he'd be okay. But I just couldn't imagine Raimi never knowing me. So that was one of the things that just kept me going, like, kept me strong and kept me moving and being like, Jesus, you got to get me through this, because he can't not have a mommy. So please just help me to get better and be that person that could just think kindness, be kindness, like, not think bad thoughts, and just let me know that it's going to be okay. And it did get okay, but if you'd have told me at the beginning that it was going to be 3 long years, I'd been like, oh, okay, I'm just going to stay in that room and wait it out, because, but yeah, it does get better. God does perform the miracles around you. He does have the people that are in your life constantly. Like I said, you learn who your friends are and keep them close, because they're the ones that you can pick up the phone call, and they're there for you, and you have people that love you all around you, even when you're thinking, nobody loves me, nobody wants me, I am such a burden to them. You are so loved. And God is amazing, and he will never, ever, 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 ever let you down. People will. Things will change in your life. Circumstances will happen. But he's always with you, and he's walking right beside you. And sometimes, like the footprints, he's carrying you. And how I talked about the prophecy and being prayed over, and they're all back there waiting to give you some words that will just get you through the next day, some prayers over you to let you know that God is there for you. He does love you. He just wants you to hear the amazing things that he thinks about you all the time. And I really, really, really encourage you to be prayed over, or even if you don't even think you need to be prayed over, if you're just like, all right, maybe I'll try this. This sounds a little interesting. It will be worth it. He really will. And I am so thankful for being able to get up here, and it was terrifying because Lisa nailed it, and I was like, oh gosh, I have to follow her. But, it's just, I'm so glad, everybody, that you're here, because God he's amazing. And now when I have a problem or something goes on, I'm like, Jesus, you've got this. Figure this out for me. Help me. Okay, I can do this. And it's just so amazing. So